Hello, everybody. My name is Jake Peterson. I'm an intuitive empath, and I'm just here to talk about stuff that pretty much pertains to Corey Good. I've been following Corey Good and David Wilcock since season one of their show Cosmic Disclosure, and just kind of want to talk about some of the experiences that I've had. I'm out here in beautiful Pacosa Springs, Colorado, doing my morning mountain biking and grounding affirmations and catching my breath. Oh my goodness. So, first things first, I'm going to go back to how I got into this whole community and how I got into spirituality. I've been an acrobat my whole life. Been doing that pretty much since day one. But that's my old story. I started my spiritual journey through Dark Night of the Soul. I was parkour coach. I've done a whole bunch of different things in the acrobatic world, but I'm just going to start at 2014 to 2016. So around that time, I was at the top of my game. I was doing everything that I was dreaming of doing on the floor. I was doing double backflips every night on the ground. And then I broke myself. I got scoliosis, plantar fasciitis. I hyperextended my knee, and I really mangled myself. And the thing about it was like, that was my life, was acrobatics. It was very spiritual to me, and I am always a very physical person. I need movement in my life, and that's what became so spiritually destructive for me, was like not being able to move, not being able to do stuff. So I just started watching a lot of things online, and I found your show. I found it fascinating, and at first I was like, yeah, right. Yeah, right. But as time progressed and I watched more of your show, I was like, well, this is a little too detailed for this to be not true. I should keep watching this. And around that time, I was already on a theosophical journey and a philosophical journey with my family and friends that I was living with. So around that time, I was going through a lot of depression and a lot of ego breakdowns and all that stuff, as we are now, right, still. But I started having dreams that were profound. I started realizing that the things that you were saying were subconsciously hitting my being, and I started getting contact over time through my dreams until I could start dealing with that in my waking life like I am today. So the first dream that I ever had that was really profound, it was a succession of dreams, was after I'd already moved back home from Colorado, back to Boise, Idaho with my mom, because like I said, I imploded and I broke my back and blah, 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 lost everything, and I'm staring at the ceiling for weeks and months, not knowing what to do with my life. I was this person and now I'm nothing, right? I just remembered staring at the ceiling, my mind's not saying anything, and I heard some voice say, Jake! And I was like, huh? That wasn't me. And then 2 seconds later, it was like, clairaudience. And I was like, or clairvoyance, one of the two. And I was like, what does that mean? So I had to Google it. And I Googled it, and the next thing I know, oh, look, a free umbrella. Keep that. No littering, right? What was interesting was that the next day, I started having all of these, like, communications. And I wasn't totally all right with that. Like, that was a little much to deal with. But I wasn't totally turned away from it because it was really encouraging. It was really, it was too uplifting for me to ignore. And I started letting it happen. And the next thing I had this dream where I'm in an old friend's house, and I'm just looking out this door, the wide open front door of his house, and there's this UFO flying around in the dream, and it's shooting this rainbow beam at random houses. And I was like, oh, hell no, or shut the door. I was like, I'm not having any of that, right, in the dream. And it was really funny because the second I shut the door, this beautiful being, walked through the door. She had paper white hair, crystal blue eyes. She had a medallion around her chest here, beautiful white robes, and was beaming light off of her body. And all she did was smile come up and tap me on the arm like that, I was tasered awake. Like I was out of bed, and I am an athlete, and I have never felt that winded before. It felt like I just sprinted a mile, and I was sweating head to toe, and I had to change my sheets. And I was like, what was that? And since then, it's been like that. I've had tons and tons of past life memories and a lot of things that were triggered by your story, by your testimony. And then I started finding other people that were like you, Corey, that were telling the same things, like James Gilliland, like Peter Maxwell Slattery. Gosh, there's just too many out there now. Too many prominent voices that have made a significant dent in the collective consciousness. So now where am I today? Well, I am still working through a lot of my human stuff like everybody else, but I am fully aware that there is a entourage of guidance in every single person, and I'm doing my best to see oneness with everything, including the political scene. And I'm doing my best today to support the QAnon movement, because I actually have been really adamant about following the Q movement, especially shout outs to Jordan Sather, True Reporting, X22 Report, all those people on YouTube who are bringing out the truth here in America about the deep state. So I've been very prominent about that. I've put aside a lot of my own life, a lot of my own friendships to speak out, because I knew that I was going to be estranged by everybody that I've ever known the second I own up to being this person. And the people that are willing to stay and respect me for who I am now, I love unconditionally. It's like that in Ascension. I feel like we are magnetized now to higher consciousness beings because we long for that wisdom in ourselves. We want to live vicariously through you, Corey, because we see that you have been through things that humans don't normally go through. And when I started having my own premonitions and spiritual experiences, I felt like that. I felt like I needed to share this. This needed to go somewhere. So I put everything on Facebook and Instagram. I kind of did what you shouldn't do, which is like, hey, by the way, I'm seeing tall whites and things like this. So when I started getting into my metaphysical experiences, it wasn't pretty and it wasn't fun. I was still a coach, coaching parkour at Danik Gymnastics in 2016. And 2016 was the year that ripped me out of any doubts that I had of this going on. And I was coaching and I was seeing this stuff at my house, seeing silhouettes like Alien vs. Predator style, like walking around my room. And I just remember going, that's new. That's terrifyingly new. And I have not prepared to deal with that at all. I just kept thinking back to you and all of the things that you were describing, faker spirits, shadow beings and all of these different things. But what really, really halted my life was when I was at work and I'm going, okay, kids, let's stretch out, let's do this. And then I'm seeing this 9-foot tall silhouette go behind Bobby over there. That's very disturbing. The kids are watching me and I'm not talking anymore, and I'm looking at this thing over there. So I had to quit my job because of it, and I just remembered going back to my house that day. It was the worst snow season in Idaho that we ever had, and I was really frustrated with my boss that we even had to come open. I quit, and I sold my road bike for like $160 cash, and I was just prepared to go anywhere in my SUV and go figure this out, and I chose Sedona. But that day, like around that time, I was doing shadow work and I'm looking in the mirror and I had a couple past life memories. So far, I've had about almost a dozen past life memories. It happened so fast to me that I couldn't even process how many lives I was living. So now I know, without a doubt today, that I'm living I'm living in two worlds. Right? You have all of these other lives that are kind of overlaying on top of each other, and I'm trying to process them. But at this time, I had a 1920s New York stockbroker kind of accent come out of me when I was looking in the mirror. And it was telling me, like, get up. get up, man. You got to financially win. You got to go do this. You got to do that. And I was like, okay, that's really where it stopped. And I was looking in my mirror again, and I was like, all right, well, is that it? And then this cowboy voice started coming through. It's like, you need to grab yourself by the bootstraps. You need to grab life by the horns. You need to get up. You need to get tough. You need to rah, rah, rah. And I was like, what's going on inside of me? And the next thing I know, I'm calm, and I'm looking at myself very observantly now. And this was just after watching a video from Teal Swan on how to do shadow work. I was very impressed with myself. And this voice came through and said, Jake, I want you to look at me very seriously. I am you from 3 years in the future. And if you don't move to Sedona and do your spiritual work, and you stay here in this house with your mom, you're going to kill yourself in 3 years. And I just remembered, like, my heart pounding, looking at myself, very honestly crying, going, are you serious? Like, what? And I took it serious. I'm very thankful that I did, because I sold that road bike and I took that cash and I bummed my way down to Sedona. I got a job at a hotel and I started working on myself, and it just exploded. All the stuff that you talked about it came through my body and my being, and I was grounding, I was walking, I was meditating. I was turning into a Lemurian again. It was really wild. And I had more of those silhouette experiences. I had one where I was working at a Marriott. It's my first job. I'm living out of my SUV. I'm grounding every day. I'm blissing out. And my first stressful day comes in Sedona, and I'm working on the cash register. And I'll never forget, like, I was not even the person that I was a month ago. And here I am learning this new job. And it's 3 times more stressful than the job I just left because of all the stuff that was going on increasing. And this lady comes in. And she's like, I want this, I want that, I want this, I want that, right? And people, if you do that to cashiers, listen to me now. Most of those people have to find individually every single button of the things that you're saying. So that was me. And being psychic, the day prior, I burnt one of my phone cords. It started smoking on my cell phone. That was new. I didn't even know psychics had this ability to, like, mess with electronics, right? So I'm messing with the cash register, trying to find the first thing that she said, and then the whole thing shut down and freezes. And I just got really angry, just primally angry. And I looked up, and there was this two giant shadowy beings behind her, and this anger, menacing energy that was just puncturing my head. It just was painful. And I looked over, and there was 2 more beside my coworker, and I was like, what is going on? And I was like, I have to leave. I dropped everything on the cash register, and I walked outside, and I just screamed. I screamed like, what is this? What is this stuff, right? And so I immediately started calling up local psychics, places that I could talk to get a session. None of them could schedule an appointment that late. And so, really concerned, I just didn't think much of it. I went back to doing my thing. The next morning, I was gonna go to Whole Foods in Sedona. That's kind of where the hangout is. Everybody goes to hang out. I was gonna go call up some psychics, and before I could do anything, this very colorfully dressed Indian man, Native American man, was sitting across from me. He's like, hey, you, come over here. Come sit next to me. And I was like, okay. So he's like, I really like your presence, your being. Like, what's your name? And well, I got to meet him, and his name was Ukwala, and he was a very well-known person there in Sedona. He was a psychic for like over 20 years or something. He was an ambassador for the Hopi tribes and all these other people. And we just clicked, I spent Easter with the guy, and he told me everything from, what I was a young heart, and I had, he kind of laid out like what I was going through and who I was seeing. And it just, it changed the whole experience. It changed everything. So the knowledge, the wisdom behind what's happening is important for us psychologically. That's why it's like, okay, yeah, it kind of sucks to talk about micronovas and earth changes, but psychologically, you're going to do better if you knew that was happening and if you didn't. And this is prime example, because here's what happened the next day. The very next day. This was my whole life for like almost a year. It was like, I go to the Buddha Beach, which is on Oak Creek, and I had to ground myself. I lay down on the beach. I'm laying down. I had this beautiful nap, and when I woke up, there's a 15-foot tall silhouette being standing in front of me, telling me remain calm. And I did. I just started laughing at it at this point, like, all right, well, you're bigger than me. You win. I'm not gonna do anything about that. You're something else. So it brought me into this humble state of awareness of like, okay, like I'm not in control a lot of times unless it's something negative. And that's what brought me to James Gilliland and brought me to Peter and going to that ranch. And I spent a lot of time there and I had even more stuff happen to me. For instance, I had a Sasquatch experience. And I had a couple of Sasquatch experiences that blew me away. I even have footprints on my Instagram of it. And, these kinds of things right now are really hard to talk to the collective because they really don't know how to handle it, And that's what makes this so fascinating because I'm just a 30-year-old kid that most people will go, yeah, right. Shut up, Jake. That didn't happen to you. But then when I show them on Instagram a footprint of Bigfoot and go, I felt all the digits, it had a 6-foot stride and all that stuff, it's a different story for them. And so a lot of this challenging of the current belief systems that we've always had, this is why I find this to be so important because I'd sat in on all of James's clearing and tipping ceremonies, and I had all of these different things to the point where I was touring, I was giving people tours of the ranch, but I wasn't doing it responsibly, and I was just telling people like, hey, this happened to me here, this happened to me here, and the next thing I know, I had this group who were just from a university, not into this stuff, just wanted a nuts and bolts UFO craft experience kind of thing, right? And it became like, it became really hard for me because like I want to tell you like, hey, Bigfoot's an interdimensional forager. It can phase in and phase out, and the Native Americans believe that. And I told all these young college kids my experiences, and all of them came up with just like, I want to know how this happens. I want to know how does this happen? It's like, I'm not a scientist. I can't tell you. I'm an experiencer. I experienced this stuff, and this is what I saw. This is what I felt. And this guy comes up to me and he goes, you know what? I'm an archaeologist. I don't know if I believe you about the Sasquatch thing. I was like, have you found one, Mr. Archaeologist? Have you? They're pretty good. Hide and seek, So it was like, one of the things I immediately started noticing was like, okay, Dave Salidas, missing 411 case. Sasquatch, likes heart-centered beings. Kids going missing in national parks and places where Bigfoot's preeminent. Bigfoot likes little kid. Hey, look, you're a human that's not terribly afraid of everything. You have a little heart-centered person in you. Let's come with me, right? I had realized how sensitive they are to who we are. So here's my Bigfoot experience for everybody. This was like on my own. I left the ranch. I got in my Forester, drove up to Mount Adams, and just picked some spot randomly, put out my offering of like food and things like that, and started doing Qigong. And I didn't know this at the time, but I basically drove up onto the Native American Indian reservation, and this orange orb started flying over my head. And I was just like, I had to like look around, like, that's okay, that's real, all right, it's there. So I went back to doing my Qigong. And I had a lot of Bigfoot experiences in my dreams, believe it or not. They were doing a lot of things in my dreams. And the funniest thing about it is that apparently I was teaching the little ones how to do parkour. And when I was doing my Qigong, a voice of them came through and was like, Jake, I really just can't thank you enough for how good you have been with the little ones, Talaki, or whatever James said, the name of one of the little ones, the name's Talaki. He's like, he just can't get enough of running and jumping off of things now. And I was like, oh, great. And that was really funny to me. So the next thing I know, I was like, look, I want to get as close as I can to you guys, and with the most purest loving intent. I did my qigong, and then I just went back and meditated in my car, and I just time-lapsed the sun going down, and it was the most, and I go out here a lot by myself, you know? It was the most terrifying experience of my life. I'm all alone. I'm miles from anywhere, by myself in my car, willingly making the intention to meet something that's 12 foot tall and giant, right? That fear came in, and it was just facing it head on, hour after hour was just painful. And eventually I started hearing, this was the weirdest thing about my experience, was that they are so brilliant. They're so smart. I was hearing them talk to me like, he's too afraid. He's too scared. We can't get any closer because he's too scared. You got to calm down, Jake. Like, we want to come closer, but we won't come closer because you're too scared. They're that sensitive. So think about little, hunters going out there with guns trying to find these things. They're not even going to phase into reality. They're not even going to deal with that at all, right? So I was just like, okay, I sending it love. And then I started hearing footprints all around my car, like thud, 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 thud. But I was looking around, and I was like, I don't see anything. But I was hearing it, and I was like, wow. And then at that point, I'm starting to fall asleep, and I fall asleep, and I had this crazy, I don't even know how to explain it in my mind. It felt like something was screaming at me from inside my mind while I was sleeping, like rah, like that, in my mind, and it woke me up. And when it woke me up, boom, I knew there was one near me, because the fear, the primal fear that I had that came up was just like, oh, like it paralyzed me. Like I couldn't do anything. And then I got this feeling of calm. And it said, like, just remain calm, keep your eyes shut, and relax. And so I did, as best I could. And I felt these giant hands touch me like this. Boom, boom. And then, like, all the way down my body until there was, like, handfuls of them all in my body. And they were heavy, and they were physically pressing me down into my cushions. I remember that very distinctly, like, actually being pressed into my sheets as if there was weight behind it. I opened my eyes. And what did I see? I saw these giant arms reaching through my car in silhouette fashion and touching me. And these big giant silhouettes standing outside of my car. I couldn't even see the top of them. Just saw these kind of like shadowy things there. The amount of love and compassion I felt like I was being held down in place and just given this energy of calm. And then that was it. They just went on their way, and I went back to sleep, and that was that. That's not like any other Sasquatch experience I think people would think of. And it was very, very personal. It was very intimate. And I find that the things that you talk about, like, for instance, I've also had an experience with Kari. And it wasn't anything like you, like going down into inner earth and all that stuff. But she was telling me, like, through meditation, like, hey, we're real. We're down here. And, it wasn't anything detailed. It was just like confirmation. You would come out and say something on an episode, and I would send something out to her with my consciousness, like, hey, is this going on? And I would get an image back of a being in like one of those egg capsules that you were talking about, and like a blonde girl like smiling at me like, yeah. And I was like, wow. So this is the fascinating thing about the dilemma that people like us would be in, is that the collective wants proof. They want scientists to come out and go, here's the fact, right? But look at the things that I've just said, and that there's millions of people like me. There's going to be a lot more people like me, and this is going to flip everything on its head. How do you discern truth now? Is it just by fact alone, or is it by synchronicity, by coincidence, by all of these other factors that we just rule out and go, no, that just can't be true because that's in the loony box. Well, what's in the loony box? The loony box keeps growing because people keep putting stuff in there and going, that can't be true. So discernment became like my best friend in the past couple of years, because I've had other beings, like tricker beings, come in and try and convince me of things that are not good for me. And I'm like, well, no, look, there's a fine line between that, you know? And thanks to Edge of Wonder as well, Ben and Rob, those guys have been really hitting nails on the head with things that I've been wanting to learn about, and my intuition has been screaming at me. So lastly, like with the whole geopolitical scene going on, I have a couple book recommendations for people that connect Trump's family to time traveling to Inner Earth, if that's something that meets you guys' fancy. Baron Trump's Marvelous Underground Journey by Ingersoll Lockwood. It's a 127-year-old book. It blows my mind because it confirms the ant people, the Hopi talk about. It talks about the Anchar. It talks about a whole bunch of different beings. And Baron Trump was this baron named Trump who lived in a castle called Castle Trump. And in the book, the depiction of Baron looks identical to Baron Trump. And Baron Trump is very, very tall for his age. He's 13 and 6'5". Now, here's the funny thing. I've learned about some of the giants from the book that he talks about and how they're so big. The reason why they're so big is because they live really close to this river of light. They talk about they go to bed at night when the river of light turns off. And I was like, well, hold on, what's the river of light? Golden light? Oh, they have all this access to this higher vibrational energy, so their bodies are bigger. And I'm like, okay, this is just a theory. What if Baron Trump's a time traveler and he's actually Q, or a part of Q? Because he knows Q is in front of the Rothschilds, in front of the Rockefellers, in front of the cabal. So many times I'm starting to see what you're saying, like this is a temporal time war. This is totally like, it's gone into that point of having to use the Looking Glass, Project Looking Glass, to like try and get through all of these potentials. And it was just like, wow, there's a book that's depicting that. And he also wrote another book called The Last President, which is brought up by the QAnon movement. And I read that book and I went, wow, it talks about how socialism would go off the crazy train, and there'd have to be one president to stop all of this. And it was just like, wow, this isn't fascinating, because then it also talks about New York rioting. And right now we kind of have a situation like that. So what I've started to look at was this. Knowing all these fascinating things are great. They're very insightful. They can help you understand reality better. But realistically, where I find to be a wise person is if you can know all this stuff and remain a good person, you know? Because knowing about satanic pedophilia, knowing about who ran the world, and still trying to find hope in life and still trying to find a way forward that's joyful is a challenge. And it's a challenge for people who are already naturally in a higher vibration, like me, light workers, starseeds, and all that stuff. So I need this. I need to come out here in nature, get my mind off of stuff, ride my bike, and have healthy habits. So I'm going to Pagosa Springs. I'm going in hot springs, and I'm realizing that the minerals in hot springs are extremely helpful for my ascension growth. And if you guys are feeling the physical changes, the mental, emotional changes, get outside, get grounding, do some qigong, tai chi, take a walk, ride your bike, get in the hot springs. And yes, there is safe places to go. Like I've stated, we've already bought property in Idaho. I'm ready. Hope you guys are ready. Let's start getting the word out there so that people can be prepared mentally, physically, and spiritually. That's what I want. That's what I hope to bring to everybody. I just want to confirm a lot of the things that you're already doing. Full support for you to go out there in the media and red pill the world. We need it. We're ready. We're ready because I think everybody is still looking at somebody to come out there and go, we know there's UFOs. Q has already done that. Consider the vastness of space. Q. So we're here. We're ready. We're rallying behind you, Corey Good. hopefully we get more people sharing their stories like me. And yes, where we go one, we go all. Peace.